I'm going to try to step back a little bit and maybe take you through kind of more of a program approach that gets kind of thrust upon you, and how you might look at that in the broad scope of what an integrated system would be about. If I don't repeat it at least a dozen times, I think the biggest thing more and more, along with the branding that Rebecca talked about, is just the general perception that you're going to see of social responsibility and sustainability. And so companies that have that presence of social responsibility, sustainability, that's carrying their brand out to the consumer, and that's what's creating this desire and association with your product. And so you can't afford a needle showing up in Japan in your product that doesn't fit with sustainability or social responsibility. So you'll see me kind of talk about some of the stuff within Smithfield broadly, and then how it might apply directly to a program. So vertical integration, obviously it's all about the product and the brands. It's your marketing position, all the way from hog production, which we typically think about where disease management would start. But really in an integrated system, we're a meat company. We're a finished product, on-the-shelf retail company. There's an ever drive to meet the growing demand, and you have that in an integrated system, whether it's the genetic side, and we want to specifically target things through our genetic program that the consumer wants. It gives us a diverse portfolio. A lot of times, you guys go to Walmart, you shop at Walmart, you understand, you go there, you can buy all your groceries. Same thing with a meat company. To be able to go to one meat company that you trust and rely on, they want to see that portfolio of products. They want your top, they want your average, they want the lowest cost type product for their consumers, and they want to be able to go there and say, do you have all these things that can meet our needs? And so the diverse portfolio that we try to have for the customer, and then continue to seek out the continuous improvement model. So continuous improvement would be a huge way of understanding how you continue to apply different aspects that you learn through your portfolio, through your products, and how do you get better in other areas. So pretty interesting through an integrated model that you'll be able to get that feedback loop that I don't know that you'd really get in other systems, all the way to here's the type of meat the consumer's wanting, here's the satisfaction with that product, and how does that pipe back into what we do at the genetic level or at the health level. So really, Smithfield Vision, continue to be a world-class consumer of packaged goods and protein company that our customers can feel good about and be the partner of choice. So really, that encompasses everything when you really step back and say that's your brand, right? Rebecca was hitting on that as well. And so brand recognition is huge. We're not just one product. It's a whole host of products that you really want people to be able to associate with their experience, their excitement. It's a good product, and they keep coming back. And so that's really what a fully integrated system looks like. I can't afford any one of those to have a bad day and throw a customer out. There's really 5 pillars of sustainability. I got 6 pictures up here because I really think helping communities, there's a ton of social responsibility out there in what we at Smithfield are doing. But just when people look at you, they're probably not going to care a ton at your disease management unless they truly believe you care, and the social responsibility that comes with that. So the 5 pillars: animal care, which we will get into in more detail. Environment, food safety and quality is huge. Like I said, the helping communities, whether it's helping hungry homes and things like that, donating food to food banks, etc., all critical parts of our 5 pillars. And then, of course, our employees. A lot of, probably one of the more surprising things, even in an integrated system, is how much focus is actually put on the growth and development of the employees within Smithfield, helping them achieve their career goals, helping them within the work environment to feel successful and be in a safe, productive system. So there's a lot that goes into those 5 pillars, but it really, again, is that social responsibility and sustainability. Just talk briefly, we do have a number of policies. They're public policies. They're out there. People can get a hold of them. They're in our annual reports. So, animal care policy, I would say from my perspective on the health side, this is our core value. So you look at the core values within a company. And Smithfield, with their core values, making sure that we have an animal care policy that's followed no matter what the program is. So as I get into some things here shortly, you'll see that these animal care policies come into play, whether it's shelter, feed and water, humane treatment, antibiotic use, euthanasia, etc. All those things are very, very critical, and they're your core foundations that you will not violate relative to whatever programs you're trying to work on that are for the customers. So it's not enough to have just the policies in place. What you'll see is anybody can write tons of policies. They may be misunderstood. They may be put on a shelf and never looked at again. There has to be some auditing that goes in association with that. And we have both internal and external auditors that come in to specifically look at this. And so there's a whole host, when you're looking at all of the different areas that we continue to audit related to health in particular, that are constantly looked at. So a lot of top truck audits, biosecurity, etc., vaccination audits. It's becoming more and more common for growers, contract growers, etc., that just hire outside people. And so we verify that all those vaccination crews have proper training, and then we actually go out and watch them to make sure we know that they're doing the right thing, and they know we can show up any time and make sure they're doing it. We've got some added disinfection things, and we'll talk more about that in some of the programs. But in addition to the routine disinfection, we've got some whitewashing or other things that is very heavily added on for health reasons. Barn hygienes, trying to put more and more teeth into that, but over 1,200 barn hygienes done in the last 12 months. 1,445 diagnostic cases really help support the role that we have in looking at the disease profile, and antibiotic use, and then over 10,000 site visits by our field staff. So they're out there constantly. They're direct feedback with the veterinarian looking at stuff, and training growers, continually upholding those things. So very critical to have this type of feedback, making sure your SOPs and policies are being followed. So more specifically, applying the disease management in an integrated system. So just applying that to that model. I'm going to talk about our Raised Without Antibiotics a little bit more in detail as application of that. And hopefully you guys can kind of see how some of that rolls together. So really what we would focus on, not a ton different, but really is the disease management drivers. And so one of the things from an integrated model, we can specifically look at the 900,000 sows within our business and say, where in that 900,000 sows do we want to position this program? Do we want to put it in North Carolina? Do we want to put it in Utah? And so we try to pick the best location for that to be the most successful from what we've learned. The other thing we're able to do is look within some of those systems, and we don't just focus on a 2,500 head sow farm. We may focus on 30,000 sows and say, look, let's set up a pair desegregation system so we can pull our offspring off of those P2+, minimize some of the bacterial challenges that you're going to see in your P1 offspring that will flow through. And so being successful in this program allows us to basically look at some of those areas, and we can drive those costs. But again, it's not just the cost of the pig at market time, it's the cost of the whole system, and recouping the value then that the customer wants on this. Older wean age, some systems have continued to focus on 19 to 20 days. Some are moving more into the mid-20s. And the older we get on this pig in particular, there's some costs associated with an older pig, but for this model, that's a very robust system for that pig to just take off, have very little issue coming in the door, and just we see them perform extremely well. The other thing that we were able to do is we have in a 30,000 sow pod. We might have 20,000 P2 sows to pick from. And so we can look if there's any enteric pressure issues on those sow farms. We can we can adjust within that system to pick our best farms. And if there's something that flares up in one, we can move to a different farm while we work on mitigating those problems in that farm. Nothing really probably shocking or surprising. Just continue with disease management, but specifically looking within how we approach some of the vaccine tools, looking at autogenous vaccines and applications there, and continuing to drive some of those things through the system. So there's not much that's extremely unusual from a pig standpoint. Continue to focus on the basics and then really do a lot with gut bugs. This is the area that I would say has probably been the most eye-opening to me with our raised without antibiotics. Salmonella's not been terrible for us at all. A little bit E. coli, and that's usually feed-related. I'll talk about that. But ileitis, in the face of some vaccinations even, we've seen some issues where it seems to pop its head. And probably plays into some of the earlier talks where we're going through just the subclinical nature of ileitis out there, Lawsonia, and what it's doing in our populations. This is another huge advantage with an integrated system. We're not just one little spot on a map. We can look at all our different locations and try to continue to maintain our biosecurity in a fashion that we pick our best farms that are able to meet that need. So we've got farms out here in Colorado. These have been consistently our most health stable sow farms, and so just being geographically away from most of the hog production, their consistent throughput and health on their offspring has been phenomenal. These are our sites, just to pin out some of our sites in Iowa. You can see these numbers. So we've strategically chosen our sites that are not in northwest Iowa, and then we've got some here. Even in southwest Iowa, there's still not as many pigs down there. They are isolated somewhat. There's more pig density here than South Dakota, but we've had really good success. Again, just picking of all the masses where we have the least likely disease pressure, which is pretty helpful in this system. I mentioned the added disinfection, so all of our RWA, they're completely all in, all out by fecal matter. Some sites in our system would typically be all in, all out by site, so they might be washed in the last barn when the first barn's placing to be efficient. But these are definitely all in, all out by fecal matter, so the site's completely washed and disinfected before pigs are brought in. So some added costs associated with that, but again, the way in which you want to manage some disease. We've got a lot that we focus on boots. This is probably going to become more standard with secure pork supply, but we've been implementing this for probably 2-3 years specifically, controlling all the traffic in and out of those barns. They're very isolated sites, but we still try to impress upon them. You don't know where your feed trucks are coming from. You don't know where the rendering guy's been at. So anytime you're walking outside those barns, you either have to have covered or you have to have outside walking boots. So that type of thing. And then just the value of good biosecurity, lines of separation, understanding the dead box, the office, etc. So just really some basic things there that we continue to focus on, which would apply anywhere. So the environment is a huge piece to this. This was something that's continued to be quite striking and plays actually really well into some of the nutrition. I think we overcomplicate some things. Obviously, warm, dry, and draft-free has been a pretty easy motto, but in the real world, it doesn't get applied like we think it should. A lot of times, brooders, are they lit? Are they correctly lit? Are they lit 24 hours in advance so the concrete warms up? Did you put the wood chips down before you lit the brooder, or did you put them down after you lit the brooder? Wood chips on a pile can definitely form good insulation and keep the concrete really cold, and the brooder's not going to go through those wood chips. So there's a lot of things you can work with to try to get proper application so that environment is actually set up well. Curtains, inlets, having the right CFM inlet speed. Constantly our barns are built today to have inlets managed for about 20 to 40 CFM versus when you got little pigs being placed and you're only trying to pull 2 to 3 CFM per pig. There's too many leaks in those barns, and so a lot of times you're not getting good air circulation and movement. So understanding what inlets can be blocked up, how you can get that proper air circulation in there is pretty critical. So with that, got a video here. These pigs were just placed, and this is kind of, it's going well when you can go into the barn. Pigs just came in the door, and they're all running around playing. They're not piled, they're not huddling. They came off the truck, they're exploring the environment, eating, drinking, etc. So a lot of times my first impression going into a barn, I'll know if they set it up correctly if I go in and pigs are very active just coming in off the truck, versus if they're just laying down piled up or chilled already. So feed intake is critical. This has continued to be an ongoing learning tool. Any sort of out-of-feed event on a baby pig, newly weaned pig, leads to E. coli. We've had it time and time again. Sometimes, obviously, the more complex diets are nice, but if he doesn't get the feed, he's going to get E. coli and diarrhea. It's happened numerous times. A feed line goes down, or somebody forgets to do something, or the feeder gets plugged, and that pen ends up scouring the very next day. You just got to get feed in front of those pigs. You got to keep it fresh. So we do a lot with feeder management. Another key area with feeder management is the diet switches. Some of our feeds go from a pellet to a mash. We start with pellet, and we might have a mash system. Those pigs do not like mash. So even as big as these pigs are, they're probably 30 pounds going on to mash, and we'll get diarrhea every time. And so we've learned to open those feeders up a little bit because they don't like the taste of it. The soybean meal inclusion rates go up, and they're pretty much opposed to it until they get hungry enough to go after it again. So we try to get that where we can drive as much intake into that pig, not cause those feed disruptions, and that's played a huge role on managing our scours. So no feed outages ever, top dress and pellet quality. And we do in our raise without antibiotics, we take some of the extra steps. Every pen is grueled for the first week, just ensuring every pig gets on feed. So I'm not going to go a ton into this. Josh mentioned this. Just work closely with your nutritionist. There's a whole host of really powerful things that I think we're learning on some of the new pigs, and being able to control some gut inflammation, control some of that bacterial load, and really drive intake. But I'll let these guys kind of tell you what to do there. We do have a huge focus, even though it's antibiotic raised without antibiotics. We focus a lot on still judicious use of antibiotics and marking pigs and pulling pigs. And so instead of an ABC type criteria just for treating the pigs, we have an ABC for marking and watching those pigs, taking it to that level so that we're finding the right pigs, marking them, watching them over the next 24 hours, seeing if there's any progression or if they're maintaining body condition. There are situations where there's immediate treatment of animals. There's no neglect of that. If there's something with CNS joint issues, if there's a swollen joint or anything like that, they're immediately treated. And we do make sure they walk those pens a lot. In fact, our field staff probably walk these pens every week when they come through, helping kind of identify if there's pigs getting missed that need to be treated or pulled more timely to some of the watch pens. So it's been a very successful program that way. And then just the continued weekly focus with our staff going in there, checking things out. So they're more hands-on, more aggressive. Again, these are not rocket science type things, but you're adding cost into a system. And so what's the recoup of that in an integrated system? We're going all the way to the meat and to the retail and saying, here's what that costs. You've asked for that. The customer's willing to pay for pieces of that. It just has to come through that way. So do the little things. Hopefully you guys take away, do the little things every day. Every pig, every day. Disease management is critical, and then really, really keep pigs eating. It's not that tricky when it comes to that. So that's all I had.